Hey everybody, it's Chris from Family Geekery, and today we are going to be looking at this Atari 50 Anniversary Collection, and I just picked this game up recently with the Steam sale, the Steam Summer Sale, and it's been on my watch list for a long time. I finally got a hold of it, and I thought I'd try it out today for the first time with this Atari controller. Now, I've reviewed this Atari controller before on the channel. I'll link that somewhere up in the top right corner. So you can check that out if you want to see the full review on this. I've had a lot of questions on this controller over the years. Unfortunately, it's not super easy to get your hands on. I happened to pick it up in person at a Micro Center, but other than that, it's kind of hard to find. But I thought we got a Atari collection here, which is supposed to be a really great compilation of games and reimagining of games, and a lot of behind-the-scenes documentary type stuff, which I'm really interested in, history of Atari type stuff. But I thought, let's try out some of these games with this controller. Now, this controller, I don't think, was designed for this. This controller is more designed for kind of arcade emulation, Raspberry Pi. The instruction booklet that has some instructions for Raspberry Pi, for PS3, and for keyboard encoding. It doesn't have anything for regular gamepad support, so these don't directly map to ABXY, so we're going to figure that out as we go. But I just wanted to see how many of these games would play on this, and if some of the games would actually use like the trackball and spinner support. You can see on the screen now that the spinner is actually making the mouse move right and left, and the trackball is making the mouse move around. So that's at least that's good so far. But we'll see how many of these games we can play. All right, so far I found out that this looks like A button, and this is the Y button. So I've got that much so far. So let's see if we can play some Pong. I'm not even sure what kind of control I'm going to use. Now, ideally, I'd use a paddle in this game. So let's see if we can find a start button somewhere. Nope, that's not it. Let's resume. There we go. So here's some kind of button. Oh, now already. So the mouse up and down is working, and you can see I'm doing just completely awesome so far. Yeah, this is not controlling so well so far. And it looks like it's 2 players, so it looks like the joystick up and down will work also. Now without a second player, without a second player, that person's never going to be able to return it. So I don't know how we can get into a 1-player game. Let me go into this menu here and maybe go to dip switch settings. Paddle range original. So it looks like you can change the sensitivity maybe, but that's not gonna set 1 player versus 2 player. Here's controls. So we can set this up and down. Let me see if we can change these settings. I don't know where the X is. Here we go, P1 type. Invert, swap axis, P2. So that's not going to be it. So let's just get back into the game again. And I don't even know. I'm trying to look on the keyboard itself if anything controls player 2. I'm guessing you just need to have a second controller set in. So I would like to find a way to use the spinner instead of the paddle, but either way, the joystick is probably the easiest. But let's get out of this game and try something that may work better. Alright, so here's Breakout. Now, Breakout was definitely a paddle game, so let's see how this one works. And at least this one looks like I can play it one player. So insert coin. There we go. So there's insert coin. 1 or 2 players. There we go. So here we go. So the paddle is working right and left on this, and then right and left on here, and then right and left on here. Alright, so let's serve. There we go. And you can see the spinner has some momentum to it. So again, a game like this on your home console would have been a paddle, which doesn't freely spin. It just goes kind of right and left like a steering wheel. The games in the arcade would have been more of a spinner like this, especially games like Arkanoid. But other than me being horrible at the game so far, and trying to figure out which of these buttons does which, I would say that this is more of an enjoyable situation than that Pong was. So this is actually pretty good for this controller, having the options of the mouse or the trackball and the joystick. Now the joystick, you can see, has no momentum. So as soon as you stop pushing it, it just stops dead. The trackball has a little bit of momentum, and then the spinner, of course, has the most. So that's good. Let's find something else. All right, so here's Sprint 8. And I am the red car here. And I went through the control settings to see if there was some way to change the steering to how it would actually be in the arcade. So in the arcade, you'd use the spinner to move left or right, or to steer left or right relative to where you're at. But it just wants you to point the joystick in the direction that you want to go. So you're accelerating with the A button here. And like if I want to go up the track, I'm actually pointing up with the joystick. And if I want to go down to the left, I'm pointing down to the left. So this is definitely take some use to, but I guess they had to do it this way because if you only had a gamepad, then they wouldn't want you to just steer left and right, I guess, maybe. But this would be a lot more fun with a steering wheel, which is essentially what your spinner is. So that's a hard pass on this one so far. Alright, so here we are on the classic game Asteroids. And right out of the box, let's go back to the game itself. And I'll show you what we started with here. So I can pivot left and right. Now in the arcade, this would have been just 2 buttons to rotate left and right, 1 button to shoot, and 1 button to thrust. So let me see if I can find the thrust button. Oops. Oh yeah, and there was also the warp button, or the teleport button. So let me see if I can find... I don't see a thrust button, and pushing up isn't thrusting. So, again, I was hoping to have some options to use a spinner, possibly, or the trackball. But even in the settings here for controls, I can change these, but rotate left and rotate right when I go into them. These controls are not doing anything, so I can only select from the actual, this. So maybe I could do, like, if I wanted to make it real arcade, I could do left and right, thrust and fire. But that's okay. The left and right with the joystick isn't horrible. It works. So I'm going to say okay on that. Let's find something else. All right, Missile Command, a very iconic arcade game that featured the trackball, probably one of the most famous trackball games there was. So let's find the start button here. And look at that. So this If this game didn't work with a trackball, that would have been just an absolute killer. So this is about as real as you can get. And let me see if I didn't have a trackball. Yeah, you can see that I could get around with this. Not near as precise, not near as nostalgic, of course. It gets the job done, but there's just something about moving around with that big trackball that just makes it so cool. So this, having the overlay on the screen, having the trackball and a real arcade button, this is a winner right here. Let's take out this plane. Boom. I don't know if that was a good guy or a bad guy. And speaking of trackball, the other iconic game of the time, Centipede, and yes, this one works just as well. Using the joystick also works, but not near as cool. Again, the momentum, it doesn't seem like it would make much of a difference, but it certainly does. It just makes it a lot more truthful to the experience that you had in the arcades. Let's find something else. Now all of this, you can see that I'm just going along a timeline here. And I'm just in the first section of the arcade origins. So this is really cool. So next up on the timeline is Tempest. Again, a very iconic game for its control style. Probably one of the first spinner type games that I remember seeing in the arcades. And let's see if this one's going to work as intended. Okay, so it's working, but it's going kind of the opposite that I would have expected it to. So let's see if we can fix that in the settings here. All the other controls had an invert. It doesn't have an invert. Okay. Oh, maybe we go to stick settings. Invert, yes. Okay, so let's hit invert no. And let's go back. Resume. Now let's see. Now we're talking. So now this is exactly what it's supposed to feel like. I wonder if it's inverted because if you're using, I mean, even if you're using the joystick, this is how I would expect it to feel. But again, having that momentum of the spinner definitely makes it worthwhile. So far I'm very impressed and happy with the control settings of this particular controller combined with this game. Again, a couple of the games in the beginning were a little rough, but now we're getting into the bread and butter of Atari's library, and it's playing great. All right, even though we've already explored a couple trackball games, my daughter Amber would just love to see this game played. So we're going to have to test this one out. And this is Crystal Caverns, another very famous trackball game by Atari. And if you've listened to the Family Geekery Podcast, we had an episode on arcades. You would have heard Amber talk about her favorite game at the arcade that we go to local here, and that is this game right here, Crystal Caverns. So I'll have to make sure that I load this one up next time she comes over to visit. So yeah, this is a great experience right here. Now as I'm going down this timeline, you know, we're reviewing the game as well as we are the controller. It says up there if I hit the X button, I can go to game library. So if I do that, then I'm just looking at the games themselves instead of the timeline of history. I'm going to stick with the timeline because it's kind of neat, and I will go back off camera and review all this stuff and read all the stories. But let's continue to look down this awesome list of games. And we're at the end of the arcade origins. So let's see what comes up next. So now we're looking at the birth of the console section. And this is, obviously, they're talking about the Atari 2600. So Atari 2600, if you've played that before or seen it before, it was just simply a joystick and one button. And that's why they had to have the dip switches to make some changes to the games. But for the most part, most games were joystick, one button. And then they had, of course, the paddle controller, which was a paddle with one button. So let's see what kind of games we've got to play here. So Combat, obviously the game that came with every system pretty much. Anybody that's got a 2600 has played this game before. It's got 100 and something different game styles with all the dip switch settings. So let's just go ahead and try one of these out. So this was left and right, and then up to move forward for the tanks. And then you got your shoot button. So the spinner doesn't do anything, which is fine. This is exactly how it would have played. And this is a lot easier if you don't have a friend playing up against you. Let's go ahead and make this a point-blank kill here. Boom. So this is a very simple game that had a bunch of different styles of play. You had tanks, you had planes, you had tanks with bouncing bullets, you had different types of mazes in between, walls to hide behind. So this is playing about exactly how I remembered it, with just a simple joystick and fire button. So very cool. Let's get something a little bit more snazzy on the home system. All right, you can't play Atari 2600 games without playing the classic adventure game. First game to have an Easter egg in it. How do I get into this game? There we go. So your first Dungeons and Dragons style game. Very simple graphics. You only have one button to use, so the one button is to drop the item that you've already picked up. Killed the dragon. I remember playing this for hours growing up. Uh-oh, we got another dragon. Forgot about him. There we go. You guys didn't think I was going to make it, did you? And then we got this maze to get through to get up to the Black Castle. So I'm going to leave us off here. Just wanted to show you that adventure was included in the collection, because that right there might make the difference between someone buying this game or not buying this game. And if you look down at the bottom of the screen, it says Game Mode Small Kingdom. Looks like you can change the game mode to Full Kingdom with random placement. So that's kind of neat. I'll have to explore that and see what that means. And let's finish off the Atari 2600 section with Yar's Revenge, a classic title. And I'm dead already. It's been many years since I played this game, so I obviously remember it, but don't exactly remember all the keys to it. There we go. So yeah, this was a great game for its time, and glad to see that it's included on this collection. So coming out of the Atari 2600 age, it went through, there was a section of some Atari 5200 type games, and then some later 2600 games, and now we're into the dawn of the PCs. So I'm guessing this would have been, yeah, like the Atari 800 and 600. So let's see if we can play some minor 2049er. And this is a game that I did have on my home computer, which was an Apple II. I've never played this version of it, but we'll see. Kind of like a Donkey Kong style game, except you need to, I don't know what the premise is, but you're basically painting all the floor without getting hit by these guys. But again, the early age of computers, they were still using the same controls that they knew, which was the joystick. So you would have a joystick normally with just one button on it. And that held true until, of course, the NES days, when you started getting into a gamepad with 4 directions and 2 buttons. And then, of course, going forward from that, they just kept on adding more and more buttons. I died the same way again. But yeah, this is a great emulation of this particular game, and it plays well with the joystick. Of course, you wouldn't need anything other than the joystick. So joystick and 1 button, this game plays great. So now we're into the 90s, it says, the 1990s and beyond. We're up to the Atari 7800. Might have to try one of these games out. Let's try out Basket Brawl. And yes, this does have a very 90s look to it. This looks a lot like Arch Rivals, if you ever played that game on the computer or on the arcade. Oops. I gotta stop hitting the wrong buttons here. Alright, so I got a punch button. I know that much. I wonder if it's only punch, and then if you have the ball, you can pass it or shoot it. Nothing better than some healthy fighting in a sports game. So yeah, some 90s sports action. Let's see what else we got. Alright, and we're into the age of the Atari Jaguar now. And there's just a couple games to play here. One of them's called Dino Dudes. Let's see if we can play this game. I've never seen this game before, never played it. Let's start the game. Discover the spear. It kind of has a Lemmings type look to it. And I haven't gotten anything to do anything yet. Oh. Oh, so down at the bottom, yeah, it looks like this might be a Lemmings style game. Because I've got two different options. I can pose, you know, with the arms up. And I can toggle down to this guy, whatever that is. Whatever he's doing there. So I don't know where I'm supposed to be going or how I get to the next guy. But yeah, we'll have to try some more of that later once I figure out how to play the game. Alright, here is a Jaguar game called Ruiner Pinball. So I'm going to see, this controller does have pinball flippers on the left and right. So I'm going to see if we can get, oh, that's a bump button. So there's the launch ball, there's a flipper. We definitely got a bump button of some sort. So let's go into the options and see if I can get left flipper. No, it's not seeing the buttons on the side. So that's unfortunate. Let me see if it sees the right flipper side. Nope. So we just, oops. We just got up and down, left and right. Got a couple nudges and launch the ball. So let's go back in now that I know the controls and see how it plays. Let's get up. I thought right flipper was down. Maybe not. Looks like a fun game. It'd be nice if we had the left and right flipper buttons working on the side. It'd be nice if I had a right flipper working at all. Let's go back in there and see if I just messed that up or... Where is the right flipper? Oh, here it is. Right flipper is B. Let's try that again. There we go. And here's the launch ball. So I guess it does make sense. I've got left over here. I've got right over here. So I guess with the control sticks type that they had for the Atari 7, or this was a Jaguar game for the Atari Jaguar, maybe they just didn't have enough buttons to recognize more than just a few buttons. So let's see what else we got. So it looks like we're going to stop here at the Jaguar, a couple Jaguar games, and then it does talk about Atari's New Millennium, and it's showing the Atari VCS. That's the PC that came out. It's basically a Ryzen-based PC that came out a couple of years ago, and you can still get them some places. I have never picked one up yet, but they look kind of neat, but they were a little overpriced when they came out, so I'm waiting to see if they ever drop down in price. And then we got a couple more, you know, where are they now type situations at the end, but that's about it. I was hoping that they'd play some of these Atari Recharged games, but as we look back into the game library, now you can see everything sorted by platform and see how many different games that you can play. And I wasn't looking on each one of these as we played through to see if there was different play styles. So yeah, so the different game modes like we see down at the bottom here. So I didn't explore all those, but I guess there's different settings that you can do for those. I was thinking that there was some more reimagined type games, but maybe I'll just have to find those, or maybe you have to unlock them, because each of these little sections here, it says that I've explored 8%, 7%, 5%. So it's possible that you unlock some stuff as you go, and I'll have to just check that out. But that's basically what I wanted to check out, to see how much of this game you could play with this controller. And I think we saw, except for a couple of games at the very beginning, that they were playable, but they just weren't optimal. You know, some of the games like the Breakout and the Pong that would have been better suited with like a spinner weren't playable as well. But we figured it out, and most of the games moving forward from that age, they were all very playable and very enjoyable. So I'm very happy with this setup. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot more than 8% explored on this game. I'm going to be playing this for a long time now, learning some more history about Atari, and I think this is going to be an enjoyable type game. So thank you for watching. If you do have any questions about this particular game or the controller again, go ahead and drop them down in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer any that I can. And if you've played this and you found some neat stuff that you need me to check out, go ahead and let me know down in the comments below what you found and must play games. that's going to wrap it up. I thank you as always for watching. If you like this, go ahead and hit that thumbs up. That helps out the channel. If you want to see more stuff like this, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And we'd love to have you come along on this journey. So thank you as always for watching. And until next time, peace out and geek out.